What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm your host for today, Simon Voyanos, aka Coach V. It is May 31st, Saturday, when I am currently recording this. This episode, I believe, should be dropping on June 2nd. Just wanted to make sure I date that. And we are going to continue to bring you more player spotlight stuff. Said this in the last episode, but I want to keep saying it in the intro for all of these. But, you know, the podcast, we're moving towards a more individual-centric look, at least when it comes to boys tackle football in Colorado. So we are going to be talking about a bunch of individual players who we feel like are the best of the best in the state. These are also players who are on our watch list, which will be dropping in July and August. We'll do every single position, and then all the best players that we feel like could play on the next level will be on that list. And so every episode we'll have a couple players from that list. On this one, we'll be talking about a lot of defensive players on the 4A level here. We have one player who we have both on a offensive watch list and a defensive watch list, and so we'll do the film breakdown stuff on both of those. But with every single player, we're going to talk about their stats / seasons from previous years. We'll do film breakdown grades, what they graded at best at, what they, needed some improvement on. We'll go over the notes with that. We'll talk about some of the offers they have. We'll talk about what they need to do to gain more offers. And then we'll talk about some potential big games this season, as well as some narratives going into next year. So there you go. A lot to talk about with plenty of great players. Let's go ahead and hop right into this. Now, the first player we are going to talk about, by the way, I apologize if I completely butchered this name, but we got Jakehlan Watts, the incoming senior here. Last year played at Vista Ridge. I believe his senior year, he will be playing for Mesa Ridge here. But as a junior, I believe this was the only year that he got significant playing time. I do have stats from his freshman year, but I'm pretty sure those are freshman year stats. He caught like 700 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns, so very productive on the freshman team there. But as a junior, had a pretty much a breakout season, I would say. Played in 12 games. On offense, had 15 receptions for 213 yards and 4 touchdowns. Very, very productive there considering the offense they ran and how efficient that offense was too. But we are spotlighting him as a cornerback because I feel like that is where we feel like he could play best right now. That's not to say he can't play wide receiver on the next level. There's just not enough film to go off of that. But as a corner, we feel pretty good. I mean, he's a good all-around athlete on defense. Had 29 tackles and 5 interceptions. Believe he led Vista Ridge in interceptions last season. Going into Mesa Ridge, he's going to be bringing that. I think he's a legit cornerback one for Mesa Ridge. Now, Mesa Ridge is a team that always has great athletes, but adding a guy like Juice Watts here is going to change that defense quite a bit. Now, let's go ahead and get into his film breakdown. The overall grade I gave him was a 79.3, which is pretty solid for the 6'1", 160-pound corner. His highest grades, let's go with his 3 highest grades, right? I gave him an 8.5 out of 10 in versatility and speed. He's got some wheels for sure. He could definitely fly down the field. You see that in his special teams film. You see some of that on offense, and then definitely defense with his recovery speed as well. It's very apparent. So I feel pretty good about that 8.5 mark. It could go up a point or down a point depending on his senior year as we watch more, but I feel pretty good about where his speed is at right now. He adds a lot of speed to any defense, and so that's what Mesa Ridge is getting. And then I also added in versatility. I mean, he could play both sides of the ball. I legit think that he will be another great wide receiving option over there for Mesa Ridge, who already has Kobe Dooley, Trayvon Salas. They brought in Leland Frescaz as well from Doherty, who we'll be talking about on a later episode. But he gives them another wide receiving threat. Kobe Dooley is already somebody you got to worry about. Adding a guy like Watts will give you another wide receiving option over there, which I think is pretty big time. And like I said, I feel like as a receiver, he could have a breakout season. And I don't doubt that he can't play wide receiver on the next level. I just also really like him at corner. And at corner, I mean, He plays man, he plays zone, he plays special teams. Gotta love that. You could kind of move him around here. And I also wouldn't be surprised if maybe you played him a little bit at safety. I think he could do that as well. Now, the lowest grades I have for him, and all of these grades, well, at least his lowest grades, these are categories that are out of 5. But I gave him a 3 out of 5 in run game defense. That translates to a 6 out of 10. He's a skinnier corner, right? I don't think he is unwilling to get involved in the run game, but I do think with his frame, he is definitely a little bit limited compared to other corners, and so would love to see him put on some weight so that he could get off of blocks better and just be a harder hitter and set that tone as a DB. That's something that stands you out from other DBs, honestly, and so would love to see that improve. Tackling is right there too, 3.5 out of 5. I think it could be a little bit better for him tackling wise. Like I said, I think some of it is maybe a strength thing as well, and maybe just being a little unwilling to throw the entire frame in there and, stop the run, but definitely would love to see that improve. And then I also gave him a 3.7 out of 5 in jump ball contest. I feel like this is definitely a grade that can go up after his senior year. Just didn't see really many opportunities, I guess, on defense for him to go up and contest the ball or come down with a contested interception that was more of a jump ball. But he is a taller corner at 6'1". I don't doubt he can do it. I just need to see the physical film of him doing that. On top of that, I do think he needs to put on just a little bit more weight here to go toe-to-toe with some of the heavier wide receivers in the state and on the college level as well. Everything we're talking about, we're trying to have that translate to the next level. Him being at 160 is not exactly going to translate. I'm not saying he needs to put on 40 pounds, but he needs to put on some weight to play on the next level and hold up against wide receivers that are bigger, and he's going to need a little bit more strength to battle those wide receivers in one-on-one. Altogether, these are the full grades that I have for him. Like I said, 79.3 is his total grade. When it comes to the categories that are worth 10 points, frame 7.2, versatility 8.5, agility, hip fluidity, I think it's solid at an 8. Would like to see that footwork improve a little bit. I think his back pedal could be a little bit clunky, which, is fine. I think it's clunky at times, but I think it could definitely be smoother, so there you go. Speed, gave him an 8.5, man-to-man coverage 8.1, zone coverage 8.3. I do like him a little bit better in zone, and man, would love to see him be a little bit more physical, so there you go. When it comes to the grades out of 5, tackling 3.5, anticipation is a solid 4, could be a little bit better. Play recognition is a 4.2. He reads plays well. He just doesn't anticipate it as well as he could, though. Jump ball contest 3.7, ball skills 4.2, and honestly could be even higher. I really liked some of the catches he made there, especially the first one on his reel. That is a highlight reel catch, but would love to see a little bit more consistency. Leverage 4.1, run game defense 3, pass breakup is a 4. I think he could get a little bit more active with his hands there. But that's also an anticipation thing too. Altogether, Watts, he's moving to Mesa Ridge where he can contribute to a team who can still actually make a run at state. That's big time. He's a long corner with good athleticism. His recovery speed is nice, and he has displayed very good hands. I like him in zone more than man right now, as he has put on full display his football IQ when baiting passes in zone. And man, his footwork can use some work as it feels a little clunky at times. My only other concern is that I'd like to see him get bigger and more involved in the run game. But other than that, a big senior year can earn him some significant offers, and as of yesterday, May 30th, I did not see any. I know camp season is right around the corner, so that could definitely change, especially as a corner going and doing a lot of one-on-ones. That could for sure change here, but right now, no offers. So there you go. When it comes down to it, I think Jakehlan Watts is going to be a great addition for Mesa Ridge. This was a defense that kind of struggled last year. You had an offense that was electric, that could score at a whim, but you had a defense that did not come up with as many turnovers and stops as you want. I think adding a guy like Juice Watts here definitely helps out a defense, a secondary, gives you a guy that could be a true legit number one cornerback who can go one-on-one with opposing team's best wide receivers and give them some issues over there. I think Juice, he has a great blend of height, frame, and then just athleticism all around. I like the ball skills too, just would like to see a little bit more consistency there. I think if he can improve his man-to-man coverage and get more involved in the run game, then he can truly be one of the elite corners in this state. I think he already is, but like hitting that next level, right? Being a guy that could play on potentially the D1 level, right? But you got to put in that work. You got to get a little bit heavier here. Would love to see him make a couple more plays in that run game. And turnovers. Turnovers is always huge when it comes to recruitment for corners. Turnovers is always a good thing when you're playing the cornerback spot, especially being so isolated out there. And I think Jakehlan Watts, he's going to be able to play in a lot of games for Mesa Ridge because I really, truly think they're going to make a deep run in 4A this year. And so you could never be mad at that. Adding more games is always a good thing, especially quality games. And so as the season goes on, as playoffs go on, he's going to get opportunities to go up against some of the best in the entire state. And they're going to rely on him to make some plays on his side of the field and hold it down over there. And I know this is mostly a defensive episode, but we might as well talk about the offensive upside. I think on the offensive side of the ball, he is somebody that can contribute as a legit wideout too. That's just assuming Kobe Dooley is wideout 1 over there, which I think makes sense, right? And he's going to be somebody that could potentially go for 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. I think he has that potential with the coaching over there, with the quarterback. He is somebody that can be very productive in that system. Not to mention, you also have special teams. He adds, oh my God, he adds on another aspect to their special teams program over there that is already electric with Dooley. You add in a guy like Watts, and you could get really creative and be really dangerous out there. I think if he can also get some big plays on special teams, that always looks good on film, right? When you send that into colleges and hoping to get recruited. And so I think the biggest things for Watts, if he's looking to get offers for next year, be big time in special teams, offense as well. So just showing some versatility. On defense, get more involved in the run game, force turnovers, that's always a good thing. And then being a part of a great team while doing all of that is always a good thing. Teams will always love to recruit great athletes who are contributing on a contending team, a winning team, because it shows that they can bring that to their squad who may already be winning or is looking to win, right? Being on a winning program pays off here, and I think Watts going to Mesa Ridge is going to be massive, not only for him, but for Mesa Ridge as well. Now, talking about some potential big games this season, I think there's a lot of big games. I mean, you could look at all of them and be like, oh, this is a big game. This is a big game for this reason or this reason. But I think the two biggest ones in the regular season that you got to look at, starting with September 12th against Dakota Ridge. That's going to be another team in the state that's contending. They got a quarterback over there who I want to say was one of the leaders, passing leaders in 4A last season. And so giving him some issues can be very good for Watts over there. Then on top of that, they play Heritage. That's a team that, you know, they run the ball as well, but they're going to pass the ball too with Jameson Cece and that whole squad over there, you know, and so he's going to have to get involved in the run game in that one, as well as the Dakota Ridge game too. But there's going to be opportunities to play the pass and shut down the pass. And so I think those are the two biggest games. If you're looking to watch Jakehlan Watts for yourself, those are the two regular season games that you absolutely got to go watch. He's going against some pretty good talent there. And then also, if you're a Mesa Ridge fan and you're trying to see how they stack up, it's a good opportunity to see how they stack up, right? Seeing how they play against some other teams that are perennial playoff teams. Dakota Ridge, I think, is a big-time contender, if not the contender this season, along with Broomfield, I guess. But I think it'll be very interesting to see how he performs in those games. And then obviously, any playoff games they play in, you got to go out there, watch Mesa Ridge. They're a fun team to watch. Watts is a great athlete. to watch, and I think he's going to fit in great with Mesa Ridge. So there you go. Excited for him, rooting for him this upcoming 2025 season as he enters his senior year. All right, now, speaking of Vista Ridge, we talked about Jakehlan Watts. Now we're going to talk about one of his old teammates in that secondary even, Jacob, a.k.a. JB Bourland. This is a kid that I've been able to watch play football since he was in middle school, and I've loved the development he's had ever since then. Did not really get too much playing time his freshman year, but made his contributions starting in his sophomore year. Played in 8 games and was very productive. 41 tackles, 5 picks, 7 pass deflections in 8 games. That's absolutely big time. Was close to being an all PMC guy, but there was a senior that just beat him out for that. But then his junior year, he improved. He got stronger, played in 12 games, 85 tackles, so doubled his tackles. 3 interceptions, so around the same area, and 5 pass deflections, like I said, in 12 games. I believe he was second in interceptions on Vista Ridge as a junior, playing from his safety spot there. So let's go ahead and hop into the film of JB Bourland here. So right now, I have him graded at a 78.3 for the 5'10", about 185-pound safety going into his senior year. This obviously can change as he has improved on stuff and whatnot, so I'm counting on that for sure here, as he has gotten better every single year. But let's start with his highest grades here. All of these grades, or at least his 3 highest grades, are out of 5. Ball skills 4.35, hit power 4.25, pass breakup 4.2. If you were to translate that out of 10, that would be 8.7 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10 for hit power, and then 8.4 out of 10 for pass breakup. And, let's talk about the ball skills first. He has very good hands. He's somebody that has a good nose for the football, and if he could get his hands on the ball, he is going to make the interception, make the catch here. He consistently shows that he can catch through traffic and through contact, and I think that's big time. That is literally forcing turnovers, and as a college coach, you want to see that. You want to see somebody who can force turnovers, be aggressive, get their hands on the ball, and make the play. That's what matters. And as a safety, turnovers are everything, right? Speaking of turnovers, let's talk about his hit power, 4.25 out of 10. That's about an 8.5 out of 10. I think that's a solid 3-star, borderline 4-star level for him when it comes to hit power, at least comparing him to other athletes around the country and whatnot. I think he's somebody that is a very physical football player, and he always has been, but it has translated super well to the high school level. He can lay the boom, and he hits with a precision that you want out of a safety, especially considering he's only 5'10", 185, and he's laying some of these hits. That's saying something. If he puts on some weight, then all I'm saying is that we're talking now. We're talking about a guy that can be a big difference maker on the next level just based on hit power. But he's special there. He's somebody that is going to set the tone early on. And it also shows when he's contributing to stopping the run. He's very active in stopping the run. And it shows in his numbers. And when you're watching him play and get out there and just lay the boom on somebody, it matters. Running backs don't just forget a big hit. Wide receivers don't just forget a big hit over the middle. And that type of setting the tone is something that you want in your program. And that's what makes JB special. Then you also have pass breakup as well. I think this also goes with his football IQ, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But, he knows when to get his hands in there. He has very good hands. He knows when, okay, I'm a little bit late here, can't make the interception, but I could be physical here, get my hands up in there and cause an incompletion. That matters, just stopping plays, stopping gains, and he does a good job of stopping a lot of the rhythm that some opposing quarterbacks might get into, and so love being able to see that. Now talking about his lowest grades here, Man coverage, gave him a 6.5 out of 10. Just really did not see him go man-to-man a lot. Not just his junior year, but his sophomore year as well. And honestly, I don't really know if that is his game, and that's not a bad thing. I don't doubt that he can go man-to-man, but it just doesn't really feel like his game. He just kind of seems like somebody that you want to keep in his zone, right? You want him out there as an enforcer, flying to the ball. If he's man-to-man and, the ball goes away from him, then he's just not able to get up in there and make as big of an impact without, obviously block shedding and doing the whole thing and whatnot. And speaking of block shedding, gave him a 3 out of 5 on his power block shedding. Didn't see many instances where he made like good contact and then block shedded from there. And there's going to be opportunities to do that this season, but I think that is definitely something that I expect to improve moving forward as he has put on weight compared to last season. So there you go. And then that's block shedding. It's one of his lower grades at a 4 out of 5. That does translate to an 8 out of 10. It's not bad, right? He's able to get his hands out there and, get around players. I think it can be a little bit more efficient, but an 8 out of 10 is not bad when it comes to finesse block shedding. Like I said, really trying to nitpick here and talk about the things that these players can improve on. And I think that's something he can still improve on as well as the rest of his grades here. And speaking of that, let's just go down the line here. Let's start with the grades out of 10. Frame gave him a 7.8. Definitely undersized here. I think if he could get to 190, even approaching 200 as a playing weight, he'll be in a very good spot to start on the next level even, so we'll see about that. Versatility gave him a 7. Doesn't really go into man, so that kind of hurts him quite a bit there. And then I don't think he plays offense anymore. I know he used to play quarterback, and maybe that changes going into next season, but right now it's a 7. Man coverage ability, 6.5. In zone, I think he's a very good zone player, 8.2. Straight line speed, 8.1. And then play recognition gave him an 8.2. And that might even be able to rise a little bit more going into next season. I really liked what I saw from him last year. I felt like he was very in control and knew when plays were going to happen. We're aware of that. I think he could have reacted a little bit faster to some of those plays, but I like the play recognition where it's at right now. Now, talking about the categories out of 5, agility, hip fluidity, 4.1, acceleration, 4.3. I think he accelerates pretty well into his top end speed, which isn't like over the top elite, but the acceleration is pretty good. Hit power 4.25, and that could even go up as he gains weight. Finesse block shedding 4, power block shedding 3, pass breakup ability 4.2, ball skills 4.35, and then form tackling. Really love his tackling 4.3 for an overall grade of a 78.3 for the incoming senior safety out of Vista Ridge, standing at 5'10", 185 pounds. Now, going into senior year, he should be a big part of this team's success. He has a nose for the football and anticipates plays well to either go make the big hit or make a play on the ball. He has displayed his ball skills and has some of the best hands from any safety in the state. I really believe that. I also really like his football IQ. Despite not having the best frame or being the craziest athlete, I think his willingness to lay down the hammer and the football IQ makes him someone who I think can play on the D2 level and be a solid rotational guy at the very least. I would like to continue to see him to develop his man-to-man skills because his versatility is a little limited right now, but regardless, he will be one of the best safeties in the state this upcoming season. As far as offers goes, as of yesterday, May 30th, he has 2 D2 offers to Fort Lewis and Sioux Falls, and that's ahead of the whole camp circuit, which I'm sure he's going to gain a lot more offers. I think right now he is a good D2 player. Like, he could go to the D2 level and eventually start, I think, and be a good starter for a good team over there. I think he has FCS and maybe D1 upside, but would like to see him get bigger and see how he moves at that frame. But right now, I really like how hard he's worked over these last coming years. This is a guy who I feel pretty comfortable in saying has been the heart and soul of this Vista Ridge defense. Somebody who plays with a lot of energy. He's gonna hit. That's what he's going to do. And if you happen to throw it his way, he's gonna come up with the turnover. He's a very dynamic safety. Here's the unfortunate thing about that, though. Teams are figuring that out. And if they haven't figured it out, then whatever. They're going to go ahead and make a mistake. He's going to make a big play, and they're going to find out the hard way. But when you're a good safety, when you're a good DB, defensive player in general, they're going to run the play away from you, right? That doesn't mean there's not going to be opportunities to get up in there and make big plays. But, don't be surprised if he comes up with more tackles, maybe a couple less turnovers here going into next year. And let's go ahead and talk about next year a little bit. So there are some big games for him this season, and I wanted to limit it to 3 regular season games that I really like. To start off, at least according to the schedule I have right now, as of May 31st, it looks like they open against Columbine here. Columbine, they're not really going to throw the ball. If they throw the ball, he should be ready for the concepts that they run out of that system over there. It's really not that complicated. Now, reading it could be tough because they are in the same formation like a million times, right? But you should know what to expect from their passing game. The big thing I want to see out of JB going into this game is getting active in the run game. As the safety for Vista Ridge, you got to get up there and set the tone. Tackles for losses, those are huge, just as big as big hits, right? If they're in front of the line, go for the big hit. Try to get an arm in there, force a turnover, something, right? But against Columbine, he should collect a bunch of tackles. This is also a good opportunity to show off his block shedding skills, getting physical, setting the tone, taking on blocks, block shedding, and then going and making the play, right? Being great in stopping the run. I think this is a great opportunity to see just how physical of a player he is, and he's going to have to bring the hammer for them to have a chance at winning this game, which is a tough one for them to win, as I am definitely more concerned about the offensive side of the ball of Vista Ridge than the defensive side right now. But either way, as an individual, I think JB Bourland could have a big game against Columbine, and I think that could also lead to more offers if he could show that physicality and just how great against the run that he can be. And then after that, you have a couple weeks here, but I think the next big game comes on, I believe this would be October 17th, against Palmer Ridge, the Battle of the Ridges, and it's always a big game, Vista Ridge, Palmer Ridge. Palmer Ridge, a perennial powerhouse, pretty much a yearly contender. They're always a tough team. If you're going to have a good game against Palmer Ridge. That'll obviously help with the recruitment, and you'll really see how he stacks up against some of the best talent in the entire state. And that's a very complete team over there. Unlike Columbine, they're going to throw the ball, they're going to run their RPOs, to read options, pass the ball a little bit here. Their line is always good. The Monument Moving Company is known for that. So for him to have a big game here would be gigantic for him, and I think he can have a good individual game here. And then a couple weeks after that, they play Durango, and I feel like this is a very underrated game. But Durango, they always have some athletes over there, and there is an athlete over there that I'm going to spotlight, a wide receiver that I would be interested in seeing how he does against a guy like JB Bourland in the back. So I personally am really looking forward to this game against Durango. I think it could be very interesting and could be another big game for JB here. So there you go, all together. Look, I don't know how good Vista Ridge is going to be this season. They're losing a lot on offense, so that's not a good thing. On top of that, they lose Jakehlan Watts. That's another guy from this defense that they are losing. That was pretty good, pretty solid last year. And so I don't know if this is going to be the most productive year from Vista Ridge as a team, but I know for JB Bourland as a senior, he's going to give it his all. He's going to play. He's going to be a tough player out there. He's going to lead that team. He's going to bring a lot of energy to this Vista Ridge team who is looking for leaders. And I think JB is already one of those leaders. I think that's only going to amplify going into senior year as he leaves it all out on the field. And I'm very excited to see how his senior year goes for him. I think he could put up some really good film. I think he's somebody who's already contending for a top 5 senior safety when it comes to that series here in the class of 26. And I hope he gets the opportunities he could get to play on the next level. I legit think he is a next level safety, and there's still a lot of potential to unlock when it comes to Bourland here. So excited for him, rooting for him, and wishing him the best of luck going into this 2025 fall season. All right, now kind of switching it up a little bit, we're going to go up north, and we're going to talk about the 6'1", 225-pound incoming senior defensive lineman out of Frederick, Nico Mashkouri, and hopefully I'm saying that last name right and not completely butchering it here. But, this is a defensive lineman. This is a player who I kind of view as a little bit more of a developmental prospect, but going into the senior year, I think there's a lot of potential for him to have a breakout season. Last season as a junior, only played in 5 games, or at least only 5 games listed where he has stats, but he had 7 tackles, not really too much going on there. Now, let's go ahead and get into the film breakdown side of things, because I think this is where things get interesting. Right now, he has a 74.4 grade here. His 3 highest grades, though, gave him a 4 out of 5 when it comes to straight line speed, so equivalent of an 8 out of 10 there. There was a play when looking through all of his highlights and reels and film where, he was able to pick up a fumble, and he kind of turned on the Jets a little bit for somebody who is currently at 6'1", 225. I know he put on a little bit more weight. He was probably at 215 playing weight-wise, I would imagine, maybe even 220, but showed some solid speed there, so that's definitely something you could work with. Speaking of frame, gave him an 8 out of 10. He's currently right now listed at 6'1", 225. I don't think he played at that last season, but going into this year, I think that's for sure something he's playing at. That's a pretty solid weight. 6'1", it's not too short. It is on the shorter end, smaller end when it comes to frames and wingspans and stuff like that, but solid spot to be in. At 225, he is just about at the level of a lot of 3-star guys. And obviously, if he puts on weight, that is going to help him out quite a bit there. So there you go. And then I also really liked his tackling. Gave him a 4.1, very fundamental. So there you go. Now, when it came to his 3 lowest grades, gave him a 3 when it came to pass coverage. He's not really somebody to drop back, so 3 is kind of about the average grade I give to players that I don't see dropping back in pass coverage, so there you go. But also gave him a 3 out of 5 in power rushing and power block shedding. Block shedding is more so on the run side of things there, and then obviously power pass rushing is that. Look, even though he is kind of a heavier lineman, he's just not as vicious and powerful up front with his hands as I wanted to see, at least his junior year. Now, I think there are some flashes. He's a 6'0 guy. I think going from junior to senior year, you could pretty much expect a big jump. If there's one thing 6'0 is very good at training, it is hand fighting and being vicious. So there you go there. I definitely expect that to be better and go up going into next season, and especially after when we evaluate him next or after his senior year, I expect that grade to be up. And then play recognition, gave him a 3.5. I feel like there are times he gets a little bit turned around when it comes to reading blockers and reading plays and whatnot. He does bite on some fakes here and there, and I think he just needs to get better at reading plays and recognizing what they are and then getting to that spot, right? And so that's something that's also going to improve while he's over at 6'0. Now, looking at all of his grades here, let's go ahead and start with the grades out of 10. Frame, gave him an 8. Versatility, gave him a 7. I feel like he can kick inside, but for the most part, right now at least, he is outside, and then he doesn't really drop into coverage or plays offense, I think. So right now he's sitting at a 7 there. Gap edge running discipline, gave him a 7.5. I think there are times where he's really good, and then there are times, like I said, where that play recognition comes into play and he is faked out just a little bit there when he should be setting that edge. Hit power, I think it's fine. It's a 7. Could be stronger, though. Agility, hip fluidity, about a 7.8. And then first step is about a 7.5. I do hope he gets a little bit faster. I think it's fine right now, but I think that should improve going into next season. Straight line speed of 4, play recognition 3.5, and pass coverage of 3 for a grade of a 74.4. Look, he's going to be playing for Frederick next year, which is pretty much reloading. I think he definitely has a little bit of a smaller frame and is underweight for somebody who's only 6'1 as well, but he's a hard worker with a lot of upside. He flashed flashed some nice technical skills with his finesse, block shedding, and pass rushing. I like some of the hand movements and the quickness of that there. If he can get stronger or fill in his frame, he can take his game to the next level. His senior year, he will have to step up his game, and we'll see if he can rise to that challenge, especially with everyone they are losing. And I think he can. For somebody at his size to have the hand fighting that he has, I think that's always a good sign to see some of that going into next season. You want to see that be more prevalent. You want to see him mix in some power moves as well, use his leverage, use his strength to really keep offensive linemen on their toes, and I think he's very capable of that. Even though he's a little undersized at 6'1", 225 for the high school level, I think that is plenty to be a chaotic force on defense, and that's what Frederick is going to need. And also, by the way, as of right now, or at least as of yesterday, May 30th, no offers, but it is before camp season, so just keep that in mind. Now, for Frederick going into this season, they're losing some big pieces, especially on offense there. They're losing kind of their big three of Gavin Ishmael, Burke Eisman, and then they are also losing Palma as well, their speedy wide receiver. And so defensively, they're going to have to step up. I feel like that's where they bring in the most experience. Not a lot, but a pretty solid amount here. And I think Nico here is going to be a big part of that. If he can be productive off the edge, that is going to spread to the rest of this defense and help out a young offense, or at least an experienced offense that is going to need the defense to step up and give them a little bit of a break here. Now, looking to big games this season, I think number one for Nico, this is August 29th against Broomfield. I believe that is either their first game or second game here at Broomfield. They have a massive offensive line. He needs to win his matchups in that one. And there's going to be plenty of great linemen to go up against, and so that's perfect timing to get some really good film against those guys. Following that, they go ahead and play Meade, another team with some big boys up front. He needs to win his matchups there. Perfect timing for him to get some good film as well. And then about a month later, they play Loveland. That's always a team that is pretty good here. They're going to run the ball, so looking to see him get very involved in the run game and stopping that. And then when they pass it, being able to pass rush and make the most out of the little opportunities that they will give him. But altogether, for a defensive lineman to play teams like Broomfield, Meade, those are really good opportunities to show what you can do. Right now, I think he's a developmental guy. You bring him in and you hope that he develops into the type of defensive player that a college coach wants. But assuming he put in a lot of work through the offseason, especially being a 6'0 guy and being more aggressive and just knowing how Matt over there refines his players, I think he could be due for a big senior season, and he's going to have to step up to the challenge. At the very least, he needs to be productive and win his matchups against Broomfield and Meade. And then down the line as well, playing other teams, he needs to be aggressive and chaotic. He needs to be somebody that the defense could rally around as a chaos inducer, somebody who sets the tone right away and helps this offense out by playing very good defense and leading good defense. So hopefully he could put it all together for Frederick going into this season. Will be a little bit of a rebuilding season for them, but for Nico, he will be going into his senior year. He doesn't have any offers as of right now. Like I said, could change over the summer, but a big senior year could give him a whole bunch of offers. We've seen this from time to time. Some colleges, they're kind of lulling around, and then after a senior season, they see a guy that they feel like could be a steal, and they go ahead and steal him. I think that is what Nico can do for Frederick going into the senior year. So rooting for him, hoping for a good season here in the fall. All right, now moving on, we're going to talk about two players, or at least our last two players that we're going to be talking about are from the same school in Dakota Ridge. The first one we're going to talk about is the incoming senior safety out of Dakota Ridge, Blake Bishop, the 6'1", 185-pound DB, plays a little bit of corner as well. I think that's worth putting out there, but let's go ahead and look at his stats from the last couple of seasons. His sophomore year, he kind of got in there. He was a rotational guy, played in 7 games, 16 tackles, 4 pass deflections, I believe. the summer before his sophomore year, we saw him play at the Red Zone Elite 7v7 tournament for Team Full Gorilla, and he really impressed, right? He was somebody who made our watch list based off of that tournament. And so then he had that sophomore year where he was very solid, but his junior year was where he stood out. In 13 games, had 57 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 8 pass deflections, playing safety, playing corner, doing it all for Dakota Ridge over there, a team that was contending in 4A and will be contending going into next season. And Blake Bishop is a big part of that just because of how versatile a defender he is in that secondary and how good of a secondary player he is. And so let's go ahead and talk about it. So I could have broke him down, his film down, as a cornerback, but I decided to use the safety rubric for that. Maybe for a top 5 seniors list, if he plays more corner his senior year than safety, I'll break him down as a corner as well. But right now, this is his safety film breakdown, and I gave him an overall grade of an 82.75, which is pretty high when it comes to safeties. I think right now it would be second amongst all the safeties in his class that I have evaluated so far. And here's why. Let's go ahead and talk about his highest grades, starting with the 8.7 out of 10 that I give him for his zone coverage ability. This is a smart football player. He plays his zones well. He baits quarterbacks into making bad decisions here. And, he's just very reliable when playing zone. He's somebody that you want to have back there. So, there you go. And you want to have him back there because he has very good play recognition. I gave him an 8.6 out of 10, whether it's reading the receiver or watching the offense as a whole and trying to dissect what concepts they're running towards his side. He is a very smart football player that knows his responsibility, knows where he needs to be for this defense to work against the play that the offense is running, and it shows on film time and time again. He's in the spot that he needs to be to go make a play, and so you love to see that out of a DB. You love to see a smart DB. And then last but not least, gave him a 4.35 acceleration grade out of 5. That is, I don't think he's the fastest straight line speed guy here in the state or even amongst all these safeties, but the acceleration is the thing that makes the difference. He gets to his top end speed so quickly here, so I'm not necessarily calling it recovery speed, but his acceleration from 0 to 100 to break on a ball to go make plays, is definitely noticeable on film. On top of that, he is a special team guy. He also plays on offense. It is very, very apparent when just watching the film how fast he is able to accelerate to his top end speed, which does mean a lot, right? Like I said, I don't think he has the most special top end speed. It's solid, but the acceleration definitely makes up for a lot of that. Now, his 3 lowest grades gave him a 3.5 out of 5 when it comes to power block shedding. He's standing at 6'1", 185, so a little bit lanky here. Not exactly somebody that does well when a receiver gets his hands on him and he's trying to basically block shed, throw this guy off of him. He's a little bit skinnier, would like to see him put on some more weight. On top of that, hit power gave him a 3.8 out of 5. Not really a hitter. He can hit. He hits as hard as he can, but it's just not naturally as, jaw-breaking or as noticeable as some other safeties that I've looked at. Like, I look at a JB Bourland, who we talked about earlier on in this episode, and Blake Bishop is just not leveling guys at the consistency that a Bourland is. And that's fine. It's not really his game, and that doesn't mean he's not a physical player. He's just not really a hard hitter like that. And then this is maybe a little bit of nitpicking, but I gave him a 4 when it came to form tackling. It's still solid, a 4 out of 5. That's equivalent to an 8 out of 10, 3-star level. I think there are times it could be a little inconsistent, though, and it can be improved. So there you go. Now, looking at the full grades, let's start with the categories out of 10. Frame, 8.3. 6'1", 185. He's a taller safety. I think he could still fill into his frame, but standing at 6'1", I think he's in a great spot. Versatility, an 8.5. Almost gave him a 9 here. And you know what? I'm going to wait on that. I want to see him play a little bit more snaps on offense here. If he does, then that'll be an easy 9 after his senior year. But, plays defense, obviously, and on defense, zone, man coverage, right? He's playing both. Doesn't really blitz a whole ton, though. I will say that. I mean, they have a lot of other guys who does that, but he's definitely somebody who could play man and zone. Special teamer for sure, and then plays a little bit of offense too. As far as man coverage ability, gave him an 8.2. I feel like he's one of the better man safeties in the entire state. When seeing him line up man-to-man on the outside, he holds up pretty well and goes step to step with most of the receivers. At least on this level, he does. And so I can live with that. He looks technically sound there. Zone coverage, though, is his strength, 8.7. Straight line speed, I think it's solid. Gave him an 8.2. Agility, hit fluidity of 4.1. Could be a little bit more fluid there, but that's nitpicking. Acceleration, 4.35. Hit power, 3.8. Finesse block shedding, 4.1. Does a good job using his hands to get off the block and get involved in the run game. Power block shedding, though, 3.5. Pass breakup ability of 4.3. Does a really good job, and I think this is an underrated thing when it comes to Blake Bishop's game. When they're throwing it his way, the receiver's going for it, does a good job getting a hand up in there and breaking up the pass and being physical until the ball is incomplete. There's a lot of textbook type of skills when watching him just break up passes specifically when it comes to Blake Bishop. And then ball skills of 4.1, has solid hands, form tackling 4, and then play recognition 8.6. A very smart safety out there. He knows what he's doing. For an overall grade of an 82.75, that is a D1 grade, but as of right now, May 30th, no offers. And that is very interesting to me. I mean, obviously ahead of camp season during the summer, so a lot can change for sure. He is playing a lot of corner for Dakota Ridge, and maybe some teams are evaluating him more as a corner rather than a safety. I think on the next level, he probably translates a little bit better as a safety here. Somebody who you could put in man, you could put in zone, you could be very versatile with it. But, he's a cover guy for sure. Now, he could be more than a cover guy. He could put on some weight, work on his hit power, get more involved in the run game, and be a more complete player. But right now, just looking at the body of work, I think he's a very good cover guy, and that's not a bad thing. In today's game, you need guys who can be versatile, who can fly all over the field, who can cover different parts of the field and make it happen. Because of this skill set, Dakota Ridge is a contender. When it comes to any other team in 4A, there aren't many teams in 4A that throws the ball to a threatening level. But if there are teams that throw the ball, he is the type of guy that could be in there and cause a lot of issues for quarterbacks, especially in pre-snap, because you don't exactly know what he's going to do. But wherever he's going to be, he's going to make the play because he's reliable over there. And that is a trait that you cannot always teach. That's a trait you earn by being a good overall football player. And that's what Blake Bishop is. And so here's the thing. When it comes to Dakota Ridge, if they can make a deep run and even go to state, I think they could legit win state. Blake Bishop is going to be a big part of that because he's going to be a big contributor in this secondary. Now, I have some film notes that I wrote down. I want to make sure I say all of this stuff as well. Look, he's somebody who can play corner, but is very versatile at DB and all around playing safety as well. Starting with the stuff I love, he's an elite cover DB, like I said. In zone, he knows how to play it perfectly. It takes away looks or even bait opposing quarterbacks to make a bad decision. In man, he is not afraid to get physical at the line and plays the leverage game well. He has good football IQ, and then once more, I'm just going to say this, not afraid to get physical. He also has pretty solid ball skills. I don't think he's the craziest athlete we've ever seen or is necessarily a hard hitter, but what he doesn't have physically, he makes up with football IQ and being a very versatile pass defender. He will be key to a Dakota Ridge team who I think can make a legit run to state. So there you go. I already said most of that, but I have these notes and I want to make sure I hit on all of those points. If Dakota Ridge is going to make a run, he's going to be a big part of it. And I think that's going to benefit him because colleges always want talented players who are a part of winning teams. And I think for Blake Bishop, the more games he could play, as in the more playoff games he could play, the better for his recruitment, because he's going against some of the best. Now, let's talk about the big games this season, this regular season. In Dakota Ridge, they have stacked the schedule. They got some pretty solid teams here in their division as well, which is one thing too. But to start off, they play Chatfield in August. That's going to be a big game. That's a team that loves to throw the ball. It is Blake Bishop's opportunity to go make some big plays, and prove his worth defending the pass. So there you go. Speaking of defending the pass, you have another team that throws the ball quite a bit. You have Mesa Ridge. Now, they're going to split it, right? They're going to run a bunch of different things. They're going to be very creative, but Mesa Ridge has some speedsters out there. If Blake Bishop can go out there and make an impact against some athletes who are already elite, we know this, in Jakehlan Watts, in Kobe Dooley, that's going to say a lot for his recruitment, right? And it's going to say a lot to how well this defense can fare against teams who can pass the ball. And then they have an interesting 5A matchup. They play Cherokee Trail on September 26th. Now, Cherokee Trail is a team that is definitely rebuilding after last year. Lost their quarterback, lost a number of just really good athletes over there. So I really feel like there's no way that they lose this game. But you're playing against some 5A talent. Cherokee Trail, one of the deepest teams in the entire state here. And so there's going to be a matchup that is going to challenge him here. He needs to be ready for that, and I think he will be. And then you have some league games. They play Ponderosa, who's always tough here. No Max Mervin, though, so I don't know if they're going to really pass the ball, but it's an opportunity for him to get involved in the run. And then they play Heritage. That's a team that will pass the ball quite a bit. Also run the ball, too. They play them on October 10th. That'll be a big game. That's a team with a lot of different weapons over there. There's going to be opportunities to both get involved in the pass and the run. For Blake Bishop, both are important. Either way, going into the senior season, I think it is going to be a very productive year. It's going to be a very long season. So on top of that, wishing him all the health, hoping he focuses on recovery, on staying healthy, because as long as he's healthy, I think he's going to be very productive for this team, who should be making a deep playoff run. And like I said, he grades out to a D1 safety. Probably not Power 5 FBS, right? I think he's FCS right now at best, but he could also be a D2 guy and be a solid D2 guy on that level. A good starter, a good contributor, right? And that's not a bad thing at all. But right now, he's playing for those opportunities. He might even gain some opportunities over the summer, but going into his senior year, there's no doubt that they're going to make a deep playoff run. It's going to be an opportunity to get some really good film to send out to colleges. And so either way, I'm rooting for him. I think he has a chance to win a state championship, and that's never something to take for granted. But they got to get there first, right? It's a whole process. So really excited for Blake Bishop and wishing him all the best as he goes into his senior year. Okay, now the last player that we are going to talk about, like I said, also playing for Dakota Ridge last year. He was our 4A MVP, most valuable playmaker. And this year he enters his senior season as one of the best, if not the best, two-way player in the entire state. That's the senior running back / linebacker Landon Kalsbeck here. Like I said, last year, won most valuable playmaker on the 4A level, but even before that, he was impactful in his sophomore year. In 11 games, he was their lead rusher with 986 yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, 8 receptions, 192 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. On defense, had 25 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and co-led in interceptions with 3. And then his junior year, he took a pretty big leap here, played in 13 games, had 1,511 rushing yards, 20 rushing touchdowns, 18 receptions for 221 receiving yards and a touchdown. But on defense at linebacker, broke out with an excellent season, 90 tackles, 11 sacks, which I believe led the team, and 2 pass deflections here. For this segment, we're going to talk about him both at running back and linebacker. I do believe most of his offers are at linebacker. I could be mistaken, but either way, want to evaluate him at both. So let's go ahead and start with this running back film. I gave him an 81.4 grade here. Obviously, that is right before this season. Let's talk about his highest grades first, right? Gave him a 9 for versatility. Also gave him that grade in his linebacker breakdown, but we'll get there. Gave him an 8.7 for frame. Landon Kalsbeck is 6'2", 210, 215. That's a pretty good spot to be in. A little tall for a running back, but he's filled in at 215. There's a lot of 4-star guys that have that kind of build. CJ Baxter from a couple years ago, he committed to Texas. He is somebody who I feel like has a very similar build to him. And then tackle breaking, gave him a 4.35 out of 5 there. He is somebody that breaks a bunch of tackles and makes a lot of opportunities for himself by breaking these tackles, whether it's at the line or on the second level. Now his 3 lowest grades are a 3 in contested catches. Really didn't make a bunch of contested catches, didn't need to. It was used as a used in the screen game a lot more, so there was no need for that. So I just haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's fine. And then I gave him a 3.5 out of 5 in receiving after catch threat, route running, and pass blocking. Just not a lot of opportunities for him to do all of that. Now, all of his grades, let's just go ahead and talk about it, starting with the categories out of 10. Frame, 8.7, like I said. Versatility, like I said, 9 out of 10. Acceleration, 8.6. This is a guy who gets to his straight line speed pretty quickly here, and he's just very explosive there. Straight line speed, gave him a 7.9. He has solid speed, but for a running back, that level is obviously different compared to other players around the country. Agility, though, gave him an 8.5. He's pretty smooth and can rack a couple cuts in a row together. Now, talking about the 5 categories here, first level vision, 4.25, second level, 4.1. He has pretty solid vision, mostly at the line. I would say that's where it's very, very apparent. On the second level, there's pretty solid vision there as well. Contested catches, 3, hands 4, rack threat 3.5, route running 3.5. He's an alright receiving threat. I wouldn't necessarily call him a second receiver or third, fourth receiver out there when he's catching passes, but he is definitely good enough. Balance and body control, gave him a 4.2, elusive cut ability 4.3, tackle breaking 4.35, and then pass blocking of 3.5 for an overall score of an 81.4 here. Look, he's the reigning MVP, has racked a number of D1 offers, like I said, at linebacker mostly, but he has proven to be a legit workhorse at running back as well. He's a power back who can throw defenders off of him like crazy and has a very good agility. His cut ability is impressive considering his size, and he's an explosive athlete who accelerates like crazy. His straight line speed isn't anything special, but with all of these other things, it doesn't matter on this level. While he is for sure a linebacker in college, in my opinion, he's going to be a menace on both sides of the ball in his senior year, and I definitely really believe that he could maybe even run for 2,000 yards if they're really feeding him the ball like that. But like I said, he's also going to be playing linebacker, and so let's go ahead and hop into that. I gave him a grade of a 78.45. His 3 highest grades here were 9. Versatility wise, he's somebody who could just be a stand-up linebacker, rush off the edge, do those things. He could cover as well. Then on top of that, obviously, he could be a very important special teamer and plays offense. Agility, hip fluidity, gave him an 8.6. For a linebacker, it is very good, has very smooth hips, and that allows him to cover sideline to sideline. Straight line speed for a linebacker, I think, is very good. Gave him a 4.3. Like I said, that sideline to sideline speed is good, and when he needs to have recovery speed in coverage, it shows with how fast he is. And at the linebacker position, I think it's in a pretty solid spot. Now, his 3 lowest grades gave him a 3.5 for power block shedding, a 3.8 for finesse block shedding, and then I believe it is a 3.9 for finesse pass rushing. Let me just go ahead and make sure that is correct. Yes, that is correct there. So there's that. Now, looking at the full grades, let's starting with the categories out of 10. Like I said, frame and versatility, 8.3 and a 9 respectively. Agility, hip fluidity at an 8.6. And then play recognition, I think, is a solid 8.3. He's a very smart football player, as are a lot of the players on Dakota Ridge. But for Kalsbek, it really shows. He flies all over the field and is just seemingly in the right spot pretty much all the time. Would like to see a little bit more consistency. I do think there are times he could be a tad bit over aggressive, but I like what I see. Now, going to the 5-point categories, man coverage ability 4.2, zone coverage ability 4.25. He's your modern day linebacker who could cover, and you love to see that. Got to see him a lot in 7-on-7s, and I thought he thrived. Hit power's a 4.1. I think it is solid, not like elite or anything, but it's at a pretty solid level where he could put a good hit on you, and you'll feel it for sure. Straight line speed of 4.3, which is pretty good for a linebacker. Form tackling 3.9, like I said, could be a tad bit over aggressive here. Would like to see that be cleaned up a little bit more. Finesse block shedding 3.8, power block shedding 3.5. I think he can be a little bit more refined with coming off of a block here, using his hands a bit more to get leverage or to shed quickly, but it is a little raw right now. There are flashes, though. And then pass rushing, power is a 3.5 and finesse is a 3.9 there. Gap responsibility is a 4.25. He plays the run well. And then catching is a 4.25. Like I said, got to watch him in 7-on-7s, and he has pretty reliable hands. At least for a linebacker, has very reliable hands. And so that grades him out at a 78.45. Now, as a linebacker, I think he's a good athlete that can be used in a number of ways and go make big plays from all over the field. He has the build to fill into an edge rusher role, but I think he can also be a stand-up linebacker. If he does edge rush on the next level, that is, I'd really like to see him clean up his hand fighting and pass rushing. It is very sloppy, and he tends to rely on straight speed just to get around blockers. And I would just love to see him get more physical and display a variety of ways to get to the ball carrier. And so that is me nitpicking. I think he's a great athlete, and he's going to get away with that on this level, but he has to refine those pass rushing and block shedding skills. Other than that, though, he is one of the best linebackers and athletes in Colorado for a reason. As of, I believe it is May 30th, he has offers from all over: Utah State, Fresno State, Washington State, Hawaii, CSU, Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota State, I believe, Portland State, Montana State, and UC Davis. So he is definitely a D1 athlete. I believe most of these are at linebacker. And here's the thing, even though he is rated at a 78.45, I do believe there is a chance that goes up, and he can be one of the best linebacker prospects we have ever looked at. I do think he needs to work on that block shedding and pass rushing to truly be an elite linebacker prospect, and that's probably one of the things holding him back here. But once he gets there, I think he's going to be in a good spot. On top of that, I also think he could be a little bit stronger as well. He's sitting at 6'2", 210, 215. He could at least put on 10 to 15 pounds to be able to contend for a starting spot on the next level, that is. On this level, I think he's totally fine, and he will be great like he has been all season. But his future is really bright. I think he's a legit D1 guy, and that's going to be big time for him. Now, looking into this season, he has pretty much done it all. He's won MVP. I'm sure he's going to be breaking a couple rushing records, or at least get close to breaking rushing records for Dakota Ridge, and be pretty much known as one of the best linebackers to ever come through Colorado, if not the best linebacker ever in Dakota Ridge history. I think those are all the things on the table for him as he enters his senior year. I expect him to probably commit before his senior year as well. We'll just have to see where he goes. Either way, I think he'll be successful. And so that leaves his senior year, right? And one of the few things he has not accomplished is winning a state championship. They've gotten close plenty of times, but I think this next year might be the best chance Dakota Ridge has at winning a state championship in a very long time, at least in the time that we have covered Colorado high school football, which is since 2020, 2021. And they got close, I think, in our first year when we covered it. But I think this will be a very good shot at making it. Last year, I believe, came short in the semis. This year, they should be able to win it. I think this is a very complete team. And it starts with stars like Landon Kalsbeck, who's going to lead their team and bring the energy on both sides of the football. There are some players that are just that special and generational where, they're going to do their thing regardless, right? And then it's up to you, the coaches, the community, and the other players around him to do what they can, use their success to their benefit, which I think the whole community benefits from a state championship, and that's the goal for Dakota Ridge going into this season. And so here are a couple games if you want to watch Landon Kalsbeck and Dakota Ridge that I feel like will be good ones. Starting out with Chatfield. This was a game last year that ended up becoming a little out of hand. Chatfield would pretty much win that one, but I really do feel like this year Dakota Ridge could beat Chatfield. So that'll be interesting. A couple weeks after that, they play Mesa Ridge here, and this matchup between Mesa Ridge and Dakota Ridge has been a pretty good rivalry the last couple years. The last couple years, it has been a very close game. You could expect that again as these two contenders go head-to-head. Following that, they play Cherokee Trail. That'll be an interesting game against a 5A team. You'll get to see Landon Kalsbeck against some 5A players who some of them could play on the next level as well. And then you have your league games. They play Ponderosa on October 2nd and then Heritage on the 10th. Those are both games that I would probably favor Dakota Ridge by a pretty decent amount, but because they are league teams, they're going to be familiar with them. They always have players over there, and so it's going to be interesting to see how Dakota Ridge responds to all of those players. But either way, I'm excited for Landon Kalsbeck's future. He is such a stud at both linebacker and running back. It's rare that you find a guy that is good at two positions on both sides of the field. And so, with that being said, it should be a big year for Dakota Ridge, and we wish him and Blake Bishop all the best moving forward as they try to contend for a state championship this upcoming season. All right, that will do it for this episode. Thank you so much for rocking with us. From here on out, for pretty much the rest of this summer, we will be having player spotlights Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it's not just going to be Colorado boys football. We're also going to do girls flag football. Not as many players because film is limited and whatnot, but we have a lot of players that we want to talk about as well and spotlight them and talk about why they're so great and, what they can do to be even better going into next season. So make sure you follow us on all of our social medias at Playmaker Corner and give us some love there. And then like, comment, subscribe, do your thing. We appreciate all the support, and we will catch you later.